Yo, what's up? It's Spose. Welcome to the Spose podcast, episode either 14 or 15. I'm not sure what episode it is. Play my theme song. Welcome to the Spose podcast. You can't hear that, but that just deafened me and my guests, and I would like to apologize to him in advance. That was awful. Hey, before we get into the podcast this week, last week I put out a contest. I was giving away a copy of the vinyl version, the red vinyl of Preposterously Dank, my first album. They're all numbered on the back, and this one is number 3 that I'm giving away. So shout out to everybody who listened to the podcast, sent in your the emails. I'm gonna just randomly pick one right now. Man, I feel like there's 2 pages of results here in Gmail, and I apologize, I'm gonna go to the first page because those are the people who sent it in first. And I'm just gonna not look, and I'm just gonna click. All right. Okay, she got the question right. The winner is, and I apologize if I say your name incorrectly, Cassandra Seiya, Sieija, Seiya. I don't know. Either way, Cassandra, you win, and I will be sending your vinyl to Ocala, Florida. So shout out to you. Thanks for listening to the Spose podcast. Enjoy the vinyl album. It's actually remastered from the original one and remixed by John Wyman. So it's unique to the if you had the OG P Dank version. Okay, so I have one more thing I got to get into before I bring in my guest, and that is my usual segment of reviewing an album in 1 minute. I'm going to bring in my trusty assistant, Siri, here. Siri, set a timer for 1 minute, you slut. Okay, my timer's going. This week I'm going to review the album All at Once by a band called Screaming Females, and I'll admit I had never heard of this band before like a week and a half ago. And I also have to admit that the only reason I heard of him is because I saw this fucking guy, Anthony Fantano, post a review of it. And I just happened to click, and I, kind of hate that dude, but kind of watch his videos. So maybe I'm a liker, not a hater. And I just pulled up the album on Apple Music, and I gotta say, this is one of the best albums I've heard in a minute. It's so fucking amazing. I even have gone back since and listened to the band's back catalog. If you live in Maine, they're actually playing at the Space Gallery in Portland April 10th. But if I could describe this band, it's like everything I've ever wanted in like a chick rock band, even though I think there's only one girl in the band. It's like Pixies meets Tool meets all this other modern rock stuff that I've always loved. So go check out All at Once by Screaming Females. The album is fucking incredible. That's my 1 minute. Okay. So my guest this week is one of the more mysterious characters in Maine music ever, since as far as I've ever known. A long time ago, I knew him as Poverty. Today, he is Thommy Kane. So, Thommy, welcome to the Spose podcast.
What's up?
We'll be clapping and stuff. Dude, super stoked to have you on to interview you, because I don't know that I've ever heard an interview with you, like a good, solid interview.
Probably not in a while. I mean, there's been a couple of
come up close to the mic if you can. Sorry.
Yeah, no, no worries. There's been a couple of interviews that have been done about me, but they're all, or done with me, but they've been as of lately, they've been usually by kind of college radio stations or things like that, kind of obscure things, but nothing that's been too intense. At least not for a while. So
just to give people some context, I first heard of you. Maybe like most people who listen to rap in Maine, I first heard of you probably through Red Hot 95.9 back in the day. I think I might have heard about you. Basically, this is what I understand of the story of Poverty, which is that you don't go by Poverty anymore. You go by Thommy Kane, but you were huge. I mean, you were a big deal, especially around here in southern Maine and Nashville. I mean, you basically, from my perspective, you started rapping, signed a huge record deal went under, and then I didn't see you for a few years, and then you pop back up, and now you're Thommy Kane. That's my like layman's terms of the situation. But could we go back to, I don't know, was it 1999, 2000 when you signed a deal?
Sure. Well, no, it was right after 9/11. It
was right after 9/11. Okay, so it's 2001.
Right at the turn of the year after September 2001. It was like 5 months later. I think I signed a deal. So it was like I believe like February or March of 2002.
And what company did you sign a deal with?
Artist Direct Records.
Artist Direct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And shout out to Artist Direct. They interviewed me one time when I was famous for a couple weeks.
Nice. Artist Direct, the music site, or Artist Direct, the label?
The music site, not
gotcha.
the label. I don't think the label's fucking with me.
Yeah. I don't think the label right now is fucking with anybody. They don't even exist anymore.
I don't think they exist anymore. Rest in peace, Artist Direct.
Mm-hmm.
But could you talk to me about that time and what led up to you getting signed? And obviously, the name Poverty was not just for play. Like, you were legit homeless.
Mm-hmm.
If you could kind of walk me up through your life up to the point where you signed that deal.
Sure. Well,
in as brief as we can.
Yeah.
That's a lot of time.
Well, I mean, I had a childhood with a mom who was a lot of problems, a lot of drugs, a lot of really bad. Like, I mean, she was doing everything from selling drugs to running prostitute rings out of her house. Like, she was crazy in and out of prison, all over the place. She did it in Florida, Chicago, Massachusetts. When I was about 17, I contacted her. I was in Indianapolis at the time, visiting temporarily with my sister, and I asked her where she was, and she had said Maine. At the time I'd never even heard of Maine. Yeah. I was like, what is that? Like,
people still don't know where Maine is.
They're still clueless. It's true. But no, I came up here, and then a week after I arrived here, she got arrested, and then she got sent to federal, or not federal. I think it was state, but it was state out of state, so she got extradited back to Indiana right after I got here. So being a homeless kid in an area I was unfamiliar with, feeling very uncomfortable that I was around so many white people, which I don't mean to make that sound as messed up as it does, but I definitely, until I came to Maine, had never been around that many people of the same color skin as me. It was weird. I had never seen anything like that before.
I know you were in Indiana, but where were you in these other places you described with her? Florida and Okay. Yeah.
And everywhere I lived in predominantly, minority populated areas. I lived in like very urban areas. So like it was kind of unusual for me, and people in Maine blew my mind immediately because they were friendly. Like when you walked in, they would give you eye contact and be like, "Hi, how you doing?" It was just like,
well, dude, even if that was like a big thing for me living when I went to college in Boston, and I just felt like, I hate this word, but I felt like depressed, and as soon as I'd come back I realized it's because literally you get on a train with 200 people who do not give one fuck about you, do not look at you, do not say hi to you, do not be like, "Oh, looks like you had a rough morning." Like, they got nothing for you.
Nothing.
So I relate to that about Maine.
100%.
It must have been shocking.
It was a definite culture shock. But after a while, I ended up kind of meeting some people that were into music. Excuse me. You just kind of have this thing where it's like, I feel like whatever you're chasing is always kind of chasing you too. So it was like my music was something I always wanted to do. So I was attracted to people who were in the music scene, and that's what I had met. My friend Jason, who convinced me to rhyme on at an open mic night at Zoots, which was, you remember Zoots from way back in the day.
It predates me, but I know the open mic was there, and then eventually it was at Free Street Taverna.
It actually went to Stone Coast Brewery first, and then to Free Street,
which I have been to.
Yeah, Stone Coast Brewery was super.
I saw Shooty's Groove. Do you remember? This band? It was like
the
OG kind of rap, not rap metal, but like rap rock.
Groove, dude. I haven't heard that in forever.
I saw him at Stone Coast.
That's like dropping the name Just Jay. I don't know if you know that name,
Just
but
Jay. No.
He used to freestyle, and he used to repeat over and over and over again the line. What was it that he always say? "I come through like that." Every other line was "I come through like that."
Do you have a fallback? Because I have like a fallback line when you everybody when they freestyle. It's like it's like Spose on the mic and not. Yeah. it's like such a. It's literally just to come up with the next line. Anyways, I cut you off. But so. You said your friend convinced you to go to the open mic and rap at Zoots, but you must have been rapping before that.
I had been rapping, but I had been rapping just to people on the street. Yeah. And I wasn't, honestly, man, I really wasn't very good. Like I rapped, I was good at maybe rapping, but I wasn't good at really saying anything. And it wasn't until I met this guy named Tony Ice, who I've never seen again, actually, since this incident. He was pretty popular back then, but it was the last time I saw him. I don't even know where he is, but he doesn't even know that he changed my life completely. But I asked him if he'd listen to me rap, and I rapped to him, and then he was like, He's like, I'm standing at the resource center, like in a homeless shelter, and I'm like rhyming to him. And he's like, you're good at rapping and everything. He's like, but you got me confused because he's like, you're a homeless kid and your mom's a drug addict. Like, I see the shit that goes on between you and your mom here and everything. And he's like, why ain't you talking about that? Like, you have a real story, but you ain't talking about nothing. You're talking about, fucking reciting words in the dictionary and shit. And I was like, wow, it kind of like really struck a nerve with me the way he said that to me. So I tried to figure out how to write how I felt and about like stories of my life and things. And I didn't really know how to do it very well right away. So I would just write out what I wanted to say. And then I would try to construct what I wrote into a rap.
I do that to this day.
Yeah.
Like if I get stuck on a song, writing it lyrically, I'll go type it out in Microsoft Word as almost like like a journal entry or like a short story or something, or just, and then I convert that into. So I'm with you on that. Okay,
absolutely. It's super.
What an interesting turning point though, where you because we all come up just kind of rapping, and I assume you were emulating rappers you had heard and liked, and just which is what we all do. But that turning point where he's like, "Why don't you make it about you?"
Yeah, exactly.
It seems like such a no-brainer, but I mean, even for me, to be honest, I was just rapping, trying to be D12. Trying to be Eminem, trying to be whomever, and Biggie, Jay-Z, whatever, until Cam Groves. I saw some of Cam's rhymes, and he was rapping about his room and his mom, taking his mom, his staying with his mom, and his girl's trying to sneak out, or he's going to Irving, and I was like, wait, wow, we could just talk about that. Yeah. And so a similar turning point for me. So Tony Ice changes your life. And then you take it to Zoots? Yeah,
and then I got up on stage for the first time. I rhymed the very first time I ever rhymed in front of anybody was over a DJ Premier beat, which is like, I mean, it doesn't get any better than that.
Agreed.
And the crowd just completely, like, it was crazy. It was like they applauded, hands in the air, screaming. Now keep in mind that like I was going to a homeless shelter when I left that night. I didn't even have the money to get in. Like I had to get like
Zoots?
It was on. So if you go up Forest Ave, like you're going down Forest Ave and then go up Forest Ave right before you go to Congress, like where Empire is on the corner.
Yeah.
It was in that building going up like on the left before
almost
you get to
where
the end
like
of Congress.
Gateway Mastering is maybe like the next
like it was literally on Forest Ave on the left. Like, okay, so you're at Forest Ave where the mobile is on your right. Like, you drive up that hill past the Y, and when you pass that next street, it's on the left.
Okay.
On that
block.
I
think there's like a tattoo parlor there now and some shit. Okay.
That's exactly right.
Okay, so you're rapping.
Crazy rave hip hop scene there. Like, I mean, people with glow sticks.
What was it big? I mean, what year is this? When you're
1998.
Okay. Yeah. So that was big. It was Fat Boy fucking Slim and the Chemical Brothers and like whatever.
Oh God, yeah. And they had hardcore shows. They had Tree there. I mean, they had
Tree
like...
was. I've literally never heard a Tree song in my life. But being a music fan in New England growing up, I knew they were banned from Boston. For like a brief period, they were like banned from playing.
They were,
which is crazy. Okay, so you go out to your first open mic and you crush it, which doesn't surprise me because you're great, at rapping. And so you leave there and you go back to the homeless shelter. You're at Preble Street.
I'm at the Oxford Street shelter.
Okay,
and at the time, like, you have to understand. I mean, like, I'm a kid that I grew up with the way I grew up. Like the fact that people were praising me for something was like it was crazy to me. So, and to me, and I hate to sound like I guess I hate to really sound like this because it kind of comes off kind of messed up, but it's not that I didn't have a passion for the music, but I had passion for music in general. I used to love listening to Pearl Jam records and Nirvana and shit like that. It wasn't just hip hop. It was just I could do it. And when I started to see people's response to me doing it, I saw it as my way to get the hell out of my situation. And that was literally what it was that pushed me to do it.
Did it click like that night? You're like, Zoots?
100%. 100%. It was immediately like, oh my God, this is what and then, well, I'll tell you where it really clicked was after Chip. You know who Chip is?
Yes, I wrote several questions about Chip.
Yeah. He discovered me from the Stone Coast Brewery, and then here's a guy that at the time lived in Yarmouth, Maine, which is a beautiful, upstanding neighborhood, beautiful model wife, perfect family. You know what I mean? And he comes into my place. I was washing dishes at Margaritas, and he walks in and he's just like, "Hey, I want to like work with you. I want to manage you." And at first I'm like, as a street kid, I'm like, dude, what are you full of shit, bro? Like, who do you gotta manage me? Who do you know? Like, I just said he's full of shit. But then when I got to know him, And I saw who he was and where he lived and everything. And he's like, I'll let you stay here. Like, he's like giving me money. He's like taking care of me. He's like, whatever you need, I'll pick you up or whatever. I'll bring you where you got to go. And I'm just sitting there thinking to myself, like, all because I can fucking rhyme cat with hat. Some rich dude from Yarmouth is driving me around town doing whatever the fuck I want. Like, it was fucking surreal to me.
Well, it's huge, though. I mean, well, you're one of those, your talent is ridiculous. And I think is a lot of not to say opportunists, but there's a lot of people who are going to look at that immediately and see it as a ticket for something for them too.
For sure.
You know, not to put that on Chip, but like the question I wrote about Chip is,
you're right though, 100%.
You know what I'm saying?
In that assessment. And I have and I think maybe at the time, because I was a street kid and I had sort of flawed logic of everyone who's not in my situation is rich, and therefore they're all a bunch of people that fuck them and blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? And obviously that's ignorant. And as I got older and realized, you know, I have absolutely no problem with people being opportunists these days. Like,
yeah. I mean, I think those are just go get it. You do. It actually brings to mind a poverty lyric that I remember from back in the day. I don't remember the last time I heard this song, but you just it reminds me of, you had this, I think it was I'm Hating, where you said you know, fucking kids in Abercrombie and Fitch that they got, you know, because their mommies are rich. Yeah, and it was, and I related because it was like, you know, my parents were divorced, and the only time we ever got stuff really was like with my dad every other weekend if we were going over there. And so I was like, yeah, fuck, you know, I've always been on the fuck rich people tip.
Yeah,
growing up in Wells, but in like the shittiest house in Wells, you know, so I relate to that. The question I did write about Chip, I go, talk to me. This is the question I wrote. I go, talk about your friend Chip, who I kind of saw as the Puff Daddy to your Biggie Smalls, or maybe more accurately, the Cheddar Bob to your Eminem. Which one is he more like?
Absolutely Cheddar Bob to my Eminem.
Yeah.
Chip could make beats, and there's absolutely no doubt about that, especially the beats back then. He could do those type of beats. He couldn't do beats like what we have today. Or if he says he could, but I mean, he's fucking lying. But anyway, and I'd tell him that.
Yo, Chip, I need beats. Get at me, bro.
But he could do them old school beats for sure, and he crushes them. But he never tried to. How do I explain it? He never tried to like market me or like tell me how to be or like or what I should say or do. He just let me do me, you know, and like. Which I thought was cool, and then he had a lot of connections, and this is where shit actually got interesting. Was his wife was adopted by a mob boss, like a real legit mobster in California, Ronnie Lorenzo, who's it's okay to say his name because if you know everyone knows who he is now, but you know. Yeah, he basically at the time was very, or at least I don't know if he was a mob boss at the time. I think maybe retired. He had kind of worked his way into
mob manager.
Yeah, Hollywood actually was paying him to like tell them stories about like
the mob so they could convert it into movies.
Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, exactly. And basically he was like, Chip went to him and he was like, look, I'm managing this kid and I really want to do something with him, and Ronnie had a couple of connections, one being that the guy from Crazy Town, Epic Mazer, was marrying his daughter. So he gave the CD to him. And this is one of my favorite stories, actually, is that Epic didn't even listen to it and was on some like who gives a shit, some kid, whatever, and threw it on the floor of his truck. And then one day, Shifty, when he decided to go on a drug binge, one of his crack episodes.
Shifty from Crazy Town.
He decided to go on a crack episode, and while he was driving around spun on crack, he would look down and was like, what is this? And he put the CD in the fucking stereo player. It was like, who the fuck is this? I got to find out who this kid is. So he asked Brett, and Brett told him, and he's like, let me talk to Ronnie right now. I got to find out who he is. Like, put Ronnie on the phone. So he gets him on the phone, and Ronnie tells him, it was Chip. He manages some kid. He's like, so he went through a series of steps to find out who I was, and they were about to be on Ozfest in Massachusetts, and he's like, I want you to come to Ozfest to come meet me. And I said, okay. So I went down there to go meet him. And I'm backstage at Ozfest.
Real quick, the songs he heard, are these
Superhuman?
Okay, so this is a project called Superhuman that you had made
right here in Portland.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, and the beats were all by Dave, Gutter, and Chip.
Okay, basically. So we'll go back to them in a minute, but take us through Ozfest.
Sure. So I go back there, and he I mean, it was kind of surreal to me because, I mean, like, everybody, like, at that time, it was, like, Linkin Park. It was all these famous people, like, everywhere.
It was 2002?
Yes, like, around 2000.
This is like, Linkin Park.
This was actually before 9/11, so it was 2001.
Okay.
But just,
Rob Zombie, maybe, or shit like that.
Exactly, and I was fucking, like, Slipknot was blowing up at that time, and I was meeting all them people, and next thing you know, Shifty comes over to me. He's like, "Dude, you're one of the best songwriters I ever heard. I want you to write my album. I want you to write for me and all this shit." And I was like, "All right." And he was like, "Where do you live?" And I'm like, "I'm nowhere." And he's like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "I don't live anywhere, dude. I'm homeless on the street. Like, I don't fucking live anywhere." And he was like, "So wait a minute. When you leave here, you're going up to Maine for what? Like, where?" I'm like, "I'm just going up there to do whatever. Like, I don't like." And he was just like, "So why don't you just come out to Hollywood with me?" And I was like, "Sure." And he was like, "Then just come with me now." And I was like, "All right." And that was it.
And that was it. And you, that's insane. That's insane.
He was like, "You don't have anything you own?" And I was like, "You're looking at what I have. Like, basically what I have fucking on." So, and that was that. And then he was kind of the catalyst of helping me work toward getting a record deal over the 7 or 8 months I was in LA.
So it wasn't until, so you did not have a record deal till you got out to LA, and he worked kind of his connections, and because they were obviously, they had the Butterfly song and they were pretty popular at the time.
They were huge.
And okay, crazy. So take me back to how you met Dave Gutter.
Well, Dave,
this is a guest of the Spose podcast. If you go back to episode 1,
the very first time I met him, he walked backstage at the Stone Coast. And there was a drawing of a fat woman on the wall, and I looked at it. I didn't know Dave at all. I just looked up at the wall and saw the fat woman on the drawing with, like, flies buzzing around her or some shit, or it was some horrendous drawing someone did on the wall. And I pointed to it and I said, "Hey, you see that chick?" And I was like, "That's your fucking baby mama," to Dave, to be funny. Just being a douchebag.
Yeah, okay, all right. It's a real asshole move.
Yeah,
all right.
So Dave was just like, "What a fucking dick." Like, he didn't like me. He was just like, "What the fuck?" And then, but then he heard me rap, and he said, according to him, of course, he was like, "Wow, that kid's like really good. I want to work with him." But he was trying to. This is what Davis told me, is he was like, I was trying to understand how a kid who was homeless and who had nothing had all this confidence to be like arrogant and walk around and be like, "I'm the shit. I don't give a fuck." Like, whatever.
Yeah.
And so it intrigued him or whatever. So one day he was at work, even though he was signed to Arista Records, he was working and sweeping floors and shit through some like work. What do they call them? Work comp job things or whatever.
Take note, children. Take note. You signed a major. He signed to Arista, a major label, and Dave Gutter is working another job. Just throw it out there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So. Huge record deal with Clive Davis, and he's sweeping floors. Jesus. Like, literally, that's
he's also in a band with 44 people in it, so yeah, it's not exactly a recipe for wealth.
And to be nice was like, "I'm gonna split my publishing with everyone,"
even though I write the songs. Although, not to take anything away from the other guys in Rustic, who are all great.
Yeah, no, it's so funny.
Okay, so then so he sees you rap, he likes you, and then you didn't know who he was?
No, honestly,
did you know the Rustic Overtones?
I knew who Rustic Overtones were, but I didn't know what Dave looked like. Okay, so when I met him, I had no idea who he was.
Gotcha.
But I had started to, because it was Chip who actually called me and was like, "Hey, this guy Dave that met you like really wants to work with you." And I'm like, "Dave who?" And he's like, "The guy from Rustic Overtones." I said, "Oh, that signed band." So then one day when I was at the shelter, I saw a newspaper on the table that had a picture of the band, and that's when I was able to kind of connect it. It was like, this guy. So I started bragging to people at the shelter, like, "Yo, this dude wants to work with me." Like, it's like a big deal, And,
I was thinking about it. When you went back to this shelter after the first night at Zoots, was it like a celebration almost? Like, motherfuckers, like, I went out here and crushed it. And
it was at the time my mom was still alive, and she was here. She had gotten I think it was like it was right after she had gotten let out, I think, or something. And it was a lot of drama or whatever. I was going through a lot of shit during this period of time, and I remember, like, after that had happened, I didn't go home, and I went to the Portland Pier, and it was empty. And I just went and sat down at the Portland Pier, and I looked out over the water, and it was like nighttime, beautiful night. And I remember thinking to myself at that moment, it occurred to me, and this is what that rapping at Zoots had did to me, is that it occurred to me that my world had gotten so big at that moment, and I realized I was like, no, so I got this. Like, I can go anywhere I want and do anything I want right now.
So dope.
Like, that's like the feeling that came over me, which I think saved me. like
Yeah, I
in a
think that-
major way.
I think. Did you have confidence before that? Do you have like self-confidence? Were you really as a teenager previous to that, or?
I don't know. I guess in some things, yeah, maybe, and in other things, no.
Yeah.
I wasn't very good with like the women or anything like that.
Yeah.
Like I was kind of like, pretty shy with that shit. And
were you not in high school? Were you in and out of high school? Or
I
did
dropped
you...
out. I was a dropout, high school dropout.
When did you do like freshman year or freshman and sophomore year?
I did freshman, sophomore, and then just right a couple months into the junior year was when I quit.
Because you were saying you were 17 when you came to Maine.
Mm-hmm.
So that's about that time.
Yeah, it was like right after.
Okay, so you never went to high school in Maine?
No, never.
Gotcha.
Although at every party I've ever been at, apparently everyone knows a rapper who battled me in high school and beat me.
Of course.
I can't. If I had $1 for every time I heard that story.
Slim J.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. I'm just making up something. Okay, so you get out to L.A. and had you ever been to L.A. before?
Never in my whole life.
So this is, and you're what, 21?
At this time, let me think. Yeah, I believe. Yep.
This sounds like a recipe for disaster, like from the jump. Like you're 21. Like just check that box so you're retarded, which is all people at 21. You're 21. Exactly. You're having more success. You're meeting famous people, introduced to a life you've never seen, coming from nothing, in a whole new environment, picked up and left. And you feel very confident, probably like you're about to take over the world. Am I wrong? Yeah. And so take me through what happens from then on.
Well, believe it or not, I went through about a good 8 months of some serious bipolar shit. Not literally like I had bipolar. I'll explain what I mean by that. It's more like Shifty would say to me, "Hey, you can be here for 6 weeks, but then I got to go on the road, and you're gonna have to you have to go back to the East Coast for a little while, but you can come back out." Like little things like that would occur.
And you're living like at his house?
I was living at his house, his apartment in Hollywood, and so we would be at a party, and I'd be at a table with literally like Chris Rock, Pamela Anderson was like basically rubbing her tits on my face, putting a lei around my neck, fucking paparazzi snapping photos of the shit. And I got Chris Rock cracking jokes about it. Fred Durst is sitting at the table with us. Cool guy, by the way. All these people were just like, around these like celebrities. And then 3 weeks later, I'm on a plane back to the East Coast to Maine, and I don't have any place to live here, so I'm at the fucking shelter. So I'm at Oxford Street Shelter, and like people don't even know. Like 2 weeks ago, I was hanging out with Fred Durst, and I can't tell them that.
And you
like,
can't pull up the pics on your phone because it's pre.
Oh yeah, I mean nobody was into
nobody's got a phone at the homeless shelter, anyways. I'm sure, but
and even then,
so you can't prove to them basically.
Right, and even then, there was no like social media then. I mean, there was none of that shit really. So like, it was not like. Yeah, it's not like it was today. I always tell people if all the stuff that had occurred to me had happened in today's age with social media, I'd be fucking majorly famous. Right?
That's why I say you're a mystery. That's why I said right out the gate, it's like the greatest mystery in Maine music, because it's almost there's pieces of evidence scattered all around, but it's never really been like you can't even go find Rise from Ruin, which was your album.
Yeah.
On Artist Direct?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, okay.
It was yeah.
So you're flying back to Maine, you're homeless in Maine, you're borderline famous in Hollywood, and you're going back and forth, and how does this end up in the record deal?
Well, it actually, I started to notice that after a long period of time, and this isn't to take anything away from Shifty, but after a long period of time that I wasn't getting any, I was there to write songs for him, and that's what was happening more than me getting my own shit off, and it was kind of getting frustrating. So I decided to seek out a producer who Chip had hooked me up with, a guy that he knew from LA, this kid Tycoon, who is now like works with like Diane Warren. He's like a huge deal now, but at the time was like making beats in a fucking closet. And I went in and started working with him and shit, and we made the beginning to Rise from Ruin. And that was the music that got me a record contract. And what happened is that it happened two ways. Tycoon had given the music to one dude who worked in the mailroom at Interscope, who knew some high up guy or whatever, and it somehow worked its way up into Jimmy Iovine's hands. And then on the other side of it, Shifty had played it for a girl he was dating, and the chick was friends with Gary Harris, who was an A&R guy at Artist Direct. So at the same time, the music hit both sides, and I wound up in a bidding war between Jimmy Iovine and Artist Direct.
Do you end up you sitting in meetings with these guys?
Yeah.
Okay.
Jimmy Iovine, by the way, just absolutely a fucking like a monster of epic proportions. Like one of the most incredible people I think I've ever sat in a room with.
Was it like just describe him a little more? Just like it's just like radiating off him, like the energy, or he's just energetic, or
he's just the fucking man. Like you meet someone and you can sit there just like it's just dripping with swag juice. Yeah. And like he had John Lennon's piano in his office. Jesus. So I mean, if that's
if anybody hasn't seen it, you should definitely go watch the Defiant Ones on HBO. I'm sure you've seen it.
Oh yeah.
Kind of the story of Jimmy Iovine, but for me, I really knew Jimmy Iovine as like the guy who did Dr. Dre, Eminem, 50 Cent, that shit. But I didn't know he was doing fucking Fleetwood Mac and Tom Petty and all that shit back in the day too.
Yeah, Bruce Springsteen.
Yeah, shout out to the boss. So you end up in a bidding war, and Artist Direct has more money than Interscope to give you, basically?
Well, actually, that's kind of where things got legally kind of weird. Like, yeah, pretty much. My attorney at the time, Lisa Sokransky, who was working for one of Clive Davis's brothers' firms, I think it's Fred Davis's entertainment law firm. I think it's Fred Davis. But anyway.
Ricky Davis?
Or maybe.
I'm just kidding.
I don't know. I was like, hey,
I don't know.
Yeah, like, I don't know. But yeah, she basically called me up and was like, and the bidding war, I wanted to sign with Jimmy Iovine. He was only offering me $90,000, but. And I say only, like, it's...
Yeah, I signed a record deal for $35,000.
Yeah.
Like a retard. Could have used you swooping in, like, with a little phone call right then, being like, bloop, just say no.
Yeah, exactly.
They'll offer you double. Yeah. Then they'll offer you quadruple. Then they'll offer you $1 million.
It started getting creepy, man. Like, I had them both giving me rental cars. I would get a rental BMW, and then I went and drove illegally, hit a cop off his motorcycle, and literally, I'm not even shitting you, this is a true story, I knocked a cop off his bike, and then from blowing through a turn without, like, stopping or whatever it was. And I didn't get in any trouble because when I told him I was there getting, meeting with Jimmy Iovine and Ted Field and all this other stuff, he said, who's this rental car belong to? And I said, Ted Field from Artist Direct Records. He's like, well, you're going to have to tell Ted Field that he's going to have to pay to get this out of the impound. And I walked back to the Standard Hotel where I was staying, and I told Chip what happened, and Chip was like, oh my God, you got to be kidding me, right?
So Chip's out here too? Has he been out there the whole time?
Well, he came out during the bidding war,
Gotcha,
to kind of manage and
okay.
Of course he was like, which I'm kind of glad he did because I think that I'm kind of glad he did and also not glad he did. I'm glad he did because he definitely handled everything in a professional manner and the way it needed to go. He definitely knew what he was doing on a professional standpoint, but his guidance led to me signing to Artist Direct over Jimmy Iovine. Okay. So
yeah.
Like him and my lawyer, which he was being told by the lawyer, you need to sign to Artist Direct. And I didn't know why she was pushing for it for a long time. And she's like, Ted Field called me and they'll give you whatever you want. And I'm like, whatever I want, huh? So to be a dickhead, I went over there and filled a contract with a bunch of ridiculous things like I want 2 albums guaranteed instead of the one with the option for one with the option for. So I want 2 with guaranteed. I was like, I want $1 million, $1.5 million budget for both. I want, $1.5 million sign-on bonus. I want to get a Cadillac Escalade. I want a condo in Hollywood. I want, I'm just stacking it all up.
Which at the time, children, the Escalade was the illest thing you could own. 2001.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I had seen Shifty had one, so I was like, I want one of those. Escalade. And next thing you know, it goes back to Ted, and he's like, yes. And
so he agrees to all of this.
All of this, and I'm like, holy shit. So now I'm like, what am I supposed to do? I have everyone in my corner is like, you're an idiot if you go back and sign a Jimmy Iovine. But Jimmy, throughout the entire time, had been hooking me up with people and sending me out. They were buying me clothes and like he was giving me bags of money. Like, it was like they were really greasing me. Like it was like he was looking out hard. He had me in limousines. He gave me tickets to the Super Bowl to watch the Patriots win their first one against the Saints.
Wow, yeah, okay.
And so I was at that game because of that. Like, and I got to meet Nelly and like we popped bottles of champagne together and shit. And like life was super good. And Jimmy Iovine was the one doing it the whole time. And so when everyone was in my corner, like, look, you got to sign to Ted Field. I was like, I can't do that unless I confront Jimmy face to face about it as a man. I like something about it. Like I felt wrong, like because of where I came from. I'm like, I can't do that. I got to go be real to him. And even though I don't regret it, it was definitely not a very fun experience because I went into a room with Jimmy Iovine sitting next to Bono and told him, I can't sign to you. And he fucking flipped on me and fucking attacked me verbally, was screaming at me, what are you, a fucking man or a fucking mouse? Are you a pussy? You don't make your own decisions. You got fucking, like, screaming at me.
Wow.
And it felt like, literally, it felt like, you know how, like, those people that you have a dad you don't want to ever disappoint? Like, I felt, like, crushed. I was like, I can't believe this guy just literally was this fucking mad at me. But I put it in the contract with Ted Field that he had to financially reimburse Jimmy Iovine for every dime he spent on me.
This is all crazy stuff. Man,
Yeah.
that's crazy. So,
and me and Jimmy still talk on Facebook. We're Facebook friends, and I shoot him a message once in a blue moon, and he responds to it.
That's crazy.
Yeah, legit.
We should just do another one where you just read your messages to Jimmy Iovine on the Spose podcast.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you've signed the record deal, and people in Maine know this somehow. Like, I knew. How did I know?
It was in the media.
Yeah,
Chip, I think, was in charge of all that, but he was the guy that got the Press Herald to talk about it.
Yeah.
At the time, CYY and WRED, which was the hip hop station back then.
Shout out 95.9 WRED.
Oh, God, I missed that station. But I'm glad we have a new hip hop station though. Regardless, 104 is definitely great. I'm just glad we have a hip hop station back because it was
Yeah, they decided to disappear for the entirety of my career.
Isn't that convenient?
Like, wait, all right, he's birthed 30 new rappers who now have a chance. Let's start a radio station now. But so yeah, 95.9 WRED disappeared in 2008, but not before. They played some Pav. They played some Poverty and.
Mike Styles was over there.
Shout out to Mike Styles, who I actually ran into not too long ago when I went down to do a show with Token. Mike Styles was there because he's heavy mass. All those kids are heavy mass terminology. All those dudes are all there. They're all
Czarface.
Very Massachusetts. He was not there. 7L and Esoteric, but that's actually how I met you the first time. Was I must have been 17. And I opened for 7L and Esoteric at Newbury Comics in Portland.
Oh, my God,
and
I remember that show.
I don't know if you opened the show also, but you were there, you and Chip, and you gave me actually me and Matt Robinson, Achromatic, who I interviewed on a previous podcast, we were a group, like we was Spose and Achromatic, we rapped, and 7L and Esoteric, but you gave me the White Bread mixtape, which I could be incorrect, but possibly something you created after the record deal?
Yeah, it was. I was still on the label.
You were still signed, yeah. And this was like a mixtape.
Right at the tail end, actually.
Okay. So, like, it's like you rapping over all white rappers' beats, but, like, murdering these. I remember we were driving, me, Cam Groves, all the kids I was chilling with in Wells. We had the, came in a little cardboard case, and we were listening to that shit like crazy. I just remember being constantly impressed with your talent. So you sign the record deal. You've already been working on the album. You make that whole album out in L.A.?
That was where things got hairy. The label never really officially said that we had ever turned in a record because every time we had given them a song, they were like, yeah, this is great, but,
Where's the single?
We need a single. And what was weird is, I'll tell you how that started. I'm Hatin' to them was the single. They loved it.
I'm hating.
They loved it. I hated it because I was like, this is not like how I...
You're hating.
Yeah, I was hating that song. Big time.
Shit was dope, though. I remember that joint.
Yeah, but the thing is it was meant to be funny, but I have a really raspy voice, and so people were like, wow, this guy's angry.
This guy hates everything.
Yeah.
But hate was, like, rap at that time was really angry. And, like, Eminem at that point, murdering his wife, and or he already has murdered her on years before.
Yeah, she was a ghost at this point.
Yeah, this is a crazy... Actually, 2002 is kind of a wild period because it's pre-G-Unit and post... What's the Eminem era, really, is what that era is, I guess. Eminem and Nelly, early Neptunes, Blueprint era Jay-Z.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that is the big Jay-Z era, too.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's the Renegade era.
Mm-hmm.
But, okay, so you sign the deal. They basically are saying, cool song, where's the single? And
Right.
then they decide, I'm Hating is the single.
Well, in the beginning, they said I'm Hating was the single, but then we went and spent a $300,000 budget on a music video. And then what had happened was DSP, this producer that I worked with out in Boston, big shout out to DSP, best producer I ever worked with in my life. He was like, he made a beat for me for a song called All Is Fair. I don't know if you ever heard that song, but
I don't know if I did.
Radio loved it. And there was a dude from Harlem named Radio Raheem, who was a huge radio guy, who got All Is Fair to like 36 radio stations down the East Coast. And they were like, this is the hit single. This I'm Hating shit ain't gonna fly.
That's a very 2018 way to pick the single, which is like the people chose the single. You know, it's like the people chose that, which is the way shit works now.
Yeah.
You know, it's like that has the most views. That's the single.
Exactly. And when you have all the biggest radio programmers all the way down the East Coast going, give me this right now, I'll play it. Why aren't we doing it?
There's no like radio is literally like if one person's playing it, everybody's playing it.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically the way it works. So okay, so the label must have been encouraged by that.
Well, no, they were discouraged because they had just spent $300,000 on the I'm Hating video. So when I went and told them we need to put money behind this, that didn't really resonate well with them when they had spent all that money on the other song. But I was like, look, I mean, radio is like saying this is a hit. Ted, it was an ego thing. It was like it was literally like, you know, this isn't the song I think is the hit. And so if radio doesn't agree with me, then, you know, I'm not going to. It was a real ego thing.
There's tons of ego in those dudes. I remember when I signed the deal with Universal, I went down for my first meeting, maybe my second meeting or something. I'm in there with Monty Littman, who I didn't understand was like a giant record executive, you know, at the time. And he's listening to my first album, Preposterously Dank, which sounds so embarrassing now when I go back and listen to the quality of it or whatever. But he's flipping through it. He's like, oh, this is the second. It was Drugs, Girls, Money, Liquor, which is a song with like the Weezer sample. Yeah. And he's like, oh, this is the second single. He's like, print it. He's like, we got the next one. Da 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 da. And then we signed the deal, and they were like, no, you know, we need something else, you know. Yeah. Okay, so is Ken
Isn't that fucking weird?
Yeah. I mean, but also I was dumb. You know, I was not smart. I was 23 and did not understand the way the game worked. I didn't understand I had all the leverage in the world. Mm-hmm. The day they called me, I was like, oh, yes, $35,000. I have none, so yes, I will take that. Mm-hmm. I didn't understand. I could just be like, nope.
Absolutely.
And even actually the day I signed the deal, I got a MySpace message from Warner, like another label, to offer me a deal basically, and I was like, oh shit, I already signed a deal. I could have had your bidding war scenario, but I didn't.
100%.
I was just too dumb, you know. I didn't know. Okay, so the big question here: can I see the I'm Hating video anywhere?
You probably. I think I saw somebody upload it once. However, I actually took it and chopped it up and made it a video to a song called Dirt.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I did some weird shit to it because I was just like, yeah, but it's like, I mean, when you look at it now, it's almost laughable how bad it looks.
I bet it was dope, though, the I'm Hating video. Yeah. Like 300 G's. What's so crazy is, like, if someone told me they're going to give me 300 G's to make a music video right now, I'd be like, okay, well, then let's make 20 music videos.
Exactly.
You know,
well, keep in mind that $300,000 now would get you fucking redemption. You'd have augmented reality creatures dancing on your forehead.
No, you're right. Okay, so that's where things start to sour with Artist Direct.
Oh yeah, and that was kind of like the turning point there, and then I thought, I was like, okay, because I was giving him these songs that everyone was like, yo, these are hits. Like I made a bunch of them in a row. It got to the point where my fans were getting irritated because every song I put out or like leaked or whatever was like a radio smash. It was like there was no rawness.
Where was the Postman in this era?
During the exact same phase.
Okay, so that was a single that was being
produced by
played
Briss, by the way. Briss now works for Dr. Dre and makes hit songs with Dr. Dre. And that was another song we gave him that they just. So after a while, I was like, okay, wait a second. Like something doesn't make any sense. Like what the fuck is going on? Like they're telling me I got to give him a hit, but we all know that I've been giving him like song after song after song. And it turned out that they didn't have any money. They had not had money for a while. So then Ted Field says to me in a meeting, I want you, the rapper Curtains, I'm trying to remember the other kid's name, Another rapper from Phoenix, he was so fucking nasty too. I can't remember his name. All the people that Artist Direct signed were fucking dope. They had a good ear for signing dope talent. They just didn't fucking know how to run a business.
Back it up, yeah.
But they, they brought all these people in, and they asked us to go to BMG and perform a live show for BMG so that they can convince them to give them like $100 million to give them more money to keep trying to push product. So when I started to figure out what was going on, I found out that they get some money. They don't get the money they're looking for, but they get some money. And this rapper from New York, Stagger Lee, do you remember that name?
Yeah, I do.
He used to be a police officer, I guess.
Oh, okay. I don't really know the story.
Yeah, so he ends up like knowing some people at BET, and they got him his video on BET. So because he puts a video out on BET, obviously, especially with the heat from Eminem,
he becomes a priority.
He becomes, hey, there he is. There's momentum going on over here. Let's grab him. And all of the money that was supposed to be for the next artist coming off the fucking, coming down the assembly line went to Stagger Lee, who turned out to be a complete and utter joke because he was a cop and he was exposed immediately. And so there was another big waste of money. It was just one big bad decision. And then they went bankrupt. While I was there, went bankrupt. Like Ted Field had to file for bankruptcy because some guy, I don't know, they did some business deal, and it was horrible how bad that company was ran. It was absolutely an atrocity. And to this day, I just heard recently that that Ted Field has lost a ton of his money, and that he has been, according to news tabloids, I don't know if it's true, but they say that he's running around. He just tried to con somebody into giving him money for a movie by lying and saying he was somebody that he wasn't, or working with people that he wasn't, and he got sued for fraud, and that there might even be criminal charges being brought up against him. So like, this is how bad this guy fell from
Jimmy
grace.
Iovine.
110%. 110%.
Damn.
Absolutely. And he told me, you're going to regret this for the rest of your life. And he was right. And I told him in a message, I said, Jimmy, you were right that I regret this for the rest of my life. And instead of being like, a dick about it, he was kind of like, listen, man, you're still young. You still have your whole life ahead of you. You could still make things happen.
That's great.
He's very positive about it and just was like, keep your head up. You got talent, just keep doing what you're doing. Like, don't let it,
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it is to be said, something about you that's always stood out is that like, you're a great rapper, but you also are like, I forget who you said it, but like, you're a great songwriter. You're a great songwriter. You write great hooks. You got melodies. You can sing, which in your current group you're in with Dave Gutter and Shane Rise, Beards. I caught a little singing when I went to see you guys live. You're doing a little bit, but like, that's always been one of the tools in your pocket, and so what happens with Rise from Ruin?
Well,
which is the album.
Yeah, they because they weren't putting it out, I put it out myself. I basically came back here and decided to pay to have them pressed up and just started pushing the product.
Okay.
And it's funny because, I don't want to compare myself to like Nas or something like that, but like in Maine for a long time, that album was heralded by people as being like a fucking Illmatic, like a local Illmatic.
Dude, it is.
It's
like it's Illmatic with like the mystery of like some album you can't get. It's like, because you could get it for a minute, but like once they're gone, they're gone.
Yeah, that's exactly right. In fact, I just found a box somewhere that had about another 300 or 400 of them. And I was like, oh my God.
I'll buy them all.
Yeah. And then resell them bitches online.
Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna eBay the fuck out of that shit. Hey, man, you have a... okay, before we move on from Rise from Ruin, I just got to throw two names out there and you tell me something about these people. Jay Dilla and Alchemist.
Alchemist was knew Chip. Chip and Al knew each other and have been friends from California. He knew him. And he basically contacted him in New York and was like, I got this rapper I'm managing. I want to introduce you to him. And he took me to New York and introduced me to Al. And I liked him a lot. Like right away, I was like, yo, this dude is fucking mad cool. Like good at making beats. Like he's the fucking man. And then he just started producing me. And I remember one day he was working on a track with me and DJ Premier walked into the studio because we were at the Oh my God, why am I forgetting the name of it? The legendary studio in New York.
I always think it's D&D.
Yeah, that's it, D&D. We're at D&D Studios. And Premier walked in and was like bobbing his head like, shit's hot, you know what I mean? And I remember just being like, Primo just said my shit is hot.
Well,
You know?
and as like a hip hop head in that era, Alchemist produced for Dilated Peoples. Guru was on the second Dilated Peoples album, Worst Comes to Worst, with the DJ Premier cuts. So maybe there's obviously they know each other through that, but maybe that's that same era.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't know this, but Guru is actually from Massachusetts.
Yes, yeah.
And so in the same neighborhoods that I'm from. And so like when I got down there, like I wanted to meet him because he was the only rapper that was anywhere that was from my neck of the woods.
Area, yeah.
So I was like, man, I can't wait to meet him. And I didn't get the chance to. I saw him in person, but we didn't get to talk. He was kind of, in and out. But yeah, man, those were interesting times, man. But
Jay Dilla.
Yeah, Jay Dilla, on the other hand, I got the pleasure to work with. I can't remember how I wound up with Jay Dilla. I can't for the life of me remember how that happened.
Yeah.
I don't know if the label did that.
There's like so much happening. I mean, even to go to, which my time on the label, I don't think was even as crazy as yours. And I don't remember so much was happening. So many things happened in like the course of like 6 months that it's hard to remember exactly how they all come together.
I had a real issue because I'm going to tell you what happened. I'm in the studio and I make a song, and in the rhythm of the song, it's like, how many ways is the world gonna praise kids for acting outrageous and spreading contagious diseases? A straight kill that ain't even. It was like literally that's how I was rocking the beat. And then it was on the studio board at the time that I was at Larrabee Studios working with some producers and stuff. And Eminem comes into town, and they're coming into Larrabee and need the studio, and we have to vacate the premise immediately. Mm-hmm. So we leave with my song live on the board. And a couple months go by, and I hear 8 Mile come out, and it's bum 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 dun 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 bum 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 bum, you know.
Yeah.
Immediately, I'm fucking furious. I'm like, and I had always been a fan of Eminem, but now I'm like, fuck him, that motherfucker. Like, I'm super mad.
Did you ever drop a diss of Eminem? Well, maybe on the White Bread mixtape?
That was basically what the Jay Dilla record was subliminally.
Oh, okay.
And that was kind of why I was bringing it up, because the dude I was working with, Carlos, I ended up talking to him about it a couple weeks later. He was an engineer. And he was like, yeah, man. He's like, I actually have to go and do a Dre session, because he used to record Tupac, this guy Carlos. So he knew Dre and all them. He's like, I got to go do a Dre session in Michigan. We're doing something with Eminem or whatever. And I said, oh, really? When you see that motherfucker, tell him I said to go fuck himself for stealing my shit. And he was just like, what? And I was like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know for sure. All I know is something seems fucking weird. And I told him the story or whatever. So he told him, or he brought it up when he was there. So he comes back and we're working, and he's like, so after I told him that, Eminem was writing a rhyme and basically looked at Dre and was like, yo, give me a name of he was like, give me a name of a white rapper or whatever. And then Dre was like, oh, and they're like thinking, and then all of a sudden he was like, oh, and he looked at Carlos and he's like, how about that Poverty Kid or whatever? And he brings me up. So this is Carlos telling me this, right? So Carlos is like thinking to himself, like, oh my God, is he really going to end up writing Tommy's fucking rap name in this shit? And then all of a sudden Dre's like, well, he's like, that kid ain't nobody. Like, why would you
You're just doing him a favor too.
Yeah.
His name in the biggest rapper of all time's record.
Yeah. So he was just like, oh, you're right. And then it was over. So Carlos comes back and is telling me about this. And he's like, I feel like you were just seconds away from being
infamous.
Really famous.
Really infamous.
Exactly. Crazy.
Are the songs you did with Jay Dilla and Alchemist, did they ever come out? Were they on Rise from Ruin? Because that's how all my label shit never came out.
Yeah, no, most of the stuff that I did never did come out. I started getting sick and tired of them not putting it out, so I started, and with the internet, of course, growing at that time, I was just like, fuck it, man. I'm going to put Paradise out myself. I'm going to put fucking, What I'm Made of up myself. I'm going to put, I'm going to put All Is Fair out myself, and I just started putting shit out. Let Us Raise You, all these old songs off that record, and generating a buzz. And then what happened was, to be honest, is that I got called back to LA to write songs again. For other people.
Did you have a publishing deal?
I didn't. I was just getting straight money.
You're just a writer.
My checks were huge.
Yeah. But you're just getting they're writing you a check for your
No,
for your
I
work,
was
or
getting
your-
royalties. I was getting
yeah.
checks, like checks, fucking crazy.
How does
checks.
that even work though? If you don't publishing, it's just like your maybe your BMI or your ASCAP.
Yeah,
Is
my
how
ASCAP was collecting it.
Cool.
And yeah, so I just kind of, I mean, I could have did a pub deal, but I was like, at the time, I was like, nah, fuck that. Like, I don't want them taking. I know
Overrated.
that they give you. Yeah, exactly. I was like, fuck that. So, yeah, basically, like, I was out in LA, and I'll tell you what ultimately became the sidetrack was that, I started partying.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't do drugs. I've never done drugs, and that's a common misconception or a myth, I might even say, around Maine that really gets on my nerves, is that people often say that I was like a drug addict or something, and tell people that I've never done drugs in my entire life. Like, I smoked weed a bunch, but like that's it. Like, I've never done any kind of
because
crack
of your
or
mom?
cocaine or. Oh, of course.
But you don't want to?
No, never. Yeah, I would never even. I would never even like. I think. Well, there is one time. I guess like you can make an exception. I had 2 strippers in a hotel and did E once.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like everybody has to do E once.
I did it once, and I got scared actually because I was like, I really enjoyed it, and I was like, yeah, I probably should never do that again because that was like really fun, and I'm sure it probably eventually won't be, but yeah, I've never done drugs, but I did drink a lot. I started partying and drinking a lot, but it wasn't.
And you're out in Hollywood?
Yeah, you know how LA is, man. It's like, that's all. It just becomes commonplace. It's just like, yo, come here. We're going to have a party. Like, come to here. They're partying over here. They're partying over there. Like, let's go. And you find yourself at all the hottest clubs. You're drinking. Then you're going to after parties. You're drinking. You're falling asleep at some. I don't know if this happened to you, but I was literally like at mansion parties, waking up on fucking couches at like, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock in the morning. Like, where the fuck am I? Like,
it was me and Cam Groves at the fucking, I forget what the name of the hotel is. It's right on Sunset, but it was literally me and Cam Groves back at the hotel, smoking blunts out in the, walking down the street on Sunset, smoking a blunt, going back into the hotel and sitting on fucking Facebook. That's what we did. We didn't have like a real LA experience. It was like, I remember my friend sent me like the Janelle Monáe album and I listened to it on headphones. And that was like,
Well, you have to understand, that's a good that's actually a good mentality. That's like what you should do, to be honest.
Yeah, a lot of it was my wife, and at this time we'd only been together for about a year and a half, and we had our kid who's or maybe 2 years, and our daughter was just turned 1. And I really didn't know what we were going to be yet. Like, I didn't know if we were going to still be together. I didn't know if we were getting married or if we were going to break up, because this record deal thing was so, not to say we're going to break up, but I just didn't know where all of this was taking me. And I just didn't know if I was supposed to be like a superstar or like a dad or like, what am I supposed to be? And part of that is being 23, 24. And thankfully, it kind of losing the record deal and like the whirlwind of the year gave me so much clarity that like my roots of my, who would become my wife, and our daughter was like the thing that made me like okay with all the other shit.
Yeah.
So it was like, oh, this is me, and so that was like a lot of clarity that I don't know if I would have got without the record deal so quick.
That's great. A lot of people don't get that, man, or ever find that. So that's really good. That's good that you did.
Well, and I, not to say resented her for it, but I resented that I wasn't just free and ridiculous in a way. But whereas like 2 years before, if I'd signed the record deal, I probably would have moved to LA, probably would have ended up on coke, probably would have, been murdered or something, like I just, my wife was like the safety net of my career that I had to, her and our daughter, I had to run everything through the filter of them. So I think it made my decisions a little smarter.
No, of course.
In that regard.
You
didn't have that.
No, I regret leaving to LA. I tell people all the time, it was a giant waste of time because I spent years out there just trying to make a label happy when I could literally just sitting in a studio all the time trying to make a label happy when I could have been in Maine continuing to do live shows, traveling and cultivating a following, building my buzz, rather than just sitting in LA trying to make a single for a label. It was a giant waste of time. And granted, that's not the label's fault. Jimmy Iovine said something to me that I never forgot and will never forget as long as I live. And I regurgitate this to every single fucking artist on the planet. People want to blame a label for why they fail. And, I didn't have a career because of that building over there. People in that building are why I failed.
Yeah.
It's fucking ridiculous. The truth is, and this is just the bare bones of it, is that a lot of people, when you start to make music, you want to believe that you're the next John Lennon. You want to believe you're the next Tupac. You want to believe that you're the next Kurt Cobain. You think that way, and you have a confidence in your music. But the truth of the matter is that 99.9% of the time, you're just not that good. Yeah. And when music is good, it can't be suppressed.
There is no building that's going to stand between the good. Yes, I totally agree. I mean, this is what same with me is people really have this because they're like, oh, fuck the label, fuck this. I'm like, man, I really would have loved to succeed on the label. I just didn't make the hit single they were looking for.
Right.
To tie that in before we go, because I got to do this other thing in a few minutes, but I want to touch on a few topics before we get out of here. Party Foul is the song that was to be my big second single. I made it out in L.A. in forget what that fucking studio is that Dr. Dre, the Dr. Dre studio with like it's like a cave. It's at like Sony Studios or something, and we were in the parking lot. There's this other little like, I don't know, it's like a guest house or something. And this dude DJ Frank E, who produced Run This Town for Jay-Z, Rihanna, he had just produced that, and we went in with him. And I was really new to the label thing. I didn't really know that that's how it worked, that you go in with the producer and you've never met before and is an engineer, and they go get you whatever you want, and you're supposed to write a hit single, and you go from 2 to 2 or something, and I just was unfamiliar with it. And so I've been doing it now for 2 weeks. We'd been in with all these different producers, and I remember that Orrin Yole was one of the producers, and he did a lot of the Asher Roth stuff, and he just did maybe somebody's fucking Kesha or something, somebody's album recently, and this group, the Cataracts, who had a single a couple years ago. And then the last day, and all those sessions I felt in over my head, and Mike Karen and all these guys, I felt in over, I didn't know what I was doing. And the last day we went in with Frank E, and it was like, oh, a guy just like us. It was like, oh, he was like our age. It was me and Cam Groves and like him and this dude Matt Toka, and we were all in there, and we wrote this record and called Party Foul. And the label, and I've been sending them to sending all these songs we made in LA to the label, and I'm sending them to my wife, and I'm, and she would always be like, this is dope, and the label would be like, this is cool, but not the single. And finally, Party Foul, they were like, this is it, this is the single. And then we get back to Maine, and we're like, all right, we got the single. And they're like, so we love the lyrics, we hate the hook. And so then it begins this 2-3 month process of rewriting this chorus 7,000 times. I wrote a hook. I wrote 10 hooks. Spencer Albee wrote a hook. The producer Detail wrote a hook, who's, if you ever heard No Worries by Lil Wayne, he's the hook on that song. Rome from Sublime wrote a hook. Every local rock artist in Maine wrote a hook. We were all trying to write this hook to please Universal, and little did we know that the best hooks just write themselves like quickly, and so we're overthinking it. And I had always idolized Dave Gutter and the Rustic Overtones. I never knew Dave, and so Spencer sends a record to Dave, and I'm like, all right, gonna get motherfucking Dave Gutter on the hook. And he sends it back, Gutter sends it back, and you're on the hook. Poverty. Yeah. And you're a big deal. This is like a big deal to me. I was like, wow, I always wanted to work with Poverty. I never knew it would be like that. I always thought it'd be like a trade in bars. It was like, I didn't know he sent me a hook. And the hook, and Universal loved the hook. That was the hook, man. That was the one you wrote was going to be the hook. And do you remember that?
Do. Yeah, I do. I was actually recording in Jeremy Green's recording studio at the time. Okay. And I got a call from Dave, and he's like, Spose has got this song that his label's saying is not a hit and they need a chorus. Could you write a chorus for this? And I said, yeah, send it over to me. So he sent it to me. I was in a session of my own, so I just paused it, pulled up the track, listened to it, thought of what I wanted the chorus to be and the melody it needed, then wrote it and sang it, had the engineer record it, and then just sent it back.
Yeah. It was so quick. Yeah, and I remember being, not to say disappointed, but I was a little like, wait, no Dave Gutter, because I was really looking for this Dave Gutter hook. And then I remember it was you, and I just remember thinking a little bit of like, not to say jealousy, but this feeling of like, oh, I finally, like, Poverty's gonna get his like victory off of my song, or like, because it was your victory that was gonna get this song to come out, and I was like, fuck this shit, man. I was a little mad about it, but the hook was money, man. The hook was money. It was great, and it just goes to show you're great with melodies.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll be honest with you, man. Like, one of the things that kind of really bothers me, in every profession that you go into, and no matter who you are, and I know you got to go, so I'll try to bubble this up, but in every profession that you go into, there is a value system that ends up becoming sort of a lifestyle, a sort of a thing you become rooted in into that profession, whether you're a cop or whether you're a fucking, whatever. There's a culture to every profession you're in. And hip hop started to become sort of a cultural mindset that I didn't really feel like I really wanted to. It didn't feel like it was really me. It didn't mesh well with who I am. And but I was good at it, and I love hip hop, and it's been a huge important thing in my life. It changed my life entirely. But I love music in general, and when I go in the studio to make music, I don't care if I'm making a country song, an R&B record, a pop record. That's Dave actually gives me shit all the time.
Did Dave inspire that at all? Because Dave's the same way.
No. I've always been that way, but it's like, I used to do write for Dave way back in, for Rustic songs and help him co-write for shit with Paranoid, and he would also help me on choruses too and my stuff. We just kind of had a thing. We never tried to charge each other or try to we just worked with each other, and we were creative. We've been creative together forever.
What's that Blue Sky joint you did maybe with them?
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Do you know that joint?
Yeah, the rap verse. Yeah, I think Dave was telling me that you really liked the rap verse that I did on that. Right?
If I can get him to send it to me, I'd love to play it at the end of this episode, because that's one of the. I just remember being really moved by how good it was, and I remember you wrote it with Dave, maybe.
Yeah, no, it was me and Dave.
I'll see if Dave will give me.
But I feel like my destiny, if I was to, I guess, I don't know, these words get thrown around. You don't really know exactly what they mean, but I feel like I'm supposed to be a songwriter. I feel like I'm supposed to be in the studio with other people.
I feel like you are too.
I'm not really, I don't really want the attention. Now that I'm a little bit older, I'm kind of glad I never made it famous. I'm actually very happy I didn't, because I really don't like attention very much. I like to write music. I like to write songs, and if I had it my way, I'd be in the studio with Katy Perry right now writing her a pop hit. Because that's what
I was supposed to be in the studio with Katy Perry. That's what my publishing company told me, but
it didn't happen. It didn't work out. Yeah.
Well, literally,
if the chances were to arise where I could get in anywhere doing that, I would jump on that. It would be a top priority for me. I've actually been lately looking around YouTube and scouring the internet, looking for young talent that I can work with, and and try to see if there's anything out there that maybe even if they don't have any money, I'll pay for it. I'll put you in the studio. I'll record you.
Write some records with them.
Exactly, and just kind of have people out there, just to kind of see. If the game ain't gonna let me in, then I might as well just say fuck it and just do it right here.
Yeah, I always tell people, I was like, I don't think I'm going to go down. I don't think I'm going to be best known as a rapper when it's all said and done. I'd like to. I'm fine to win the Grammy for the country record I write when I'm 40.
Yeah,
I'm fine with that.
You might even become famous as a fucking radio guy after this podcast. After this one. You never know. You have a good voice for it. I heard you on CYY. You have a good personality for it. It's fucking completely you're fucking great at this. And there's not a lot of people who can do this. There's people who want to, but they don't. They trust me.
Well, and I think maybe it's just a little bit of I was going to attribute it to having some success and being comfortable and not rattled by the spotlight of having the mic on, but that's not really it. I've really just been like this my whole life, or since I was in 7th, 8th grade. Right. So it's just always been talkative.
Yeah, but your knowledge of hip hop, you need to be like a DJ Acrobatic. You need to have a YouTube channel.
Oh, academic.
All right,
DJ academic.
I meant academic.
Shout out to Mr. Liff and Acrobatic.
I did not mean academic. Sorry, but you need to be like that. You need a YouTube channel where you're sitting down, where you got rappers coming in and you're talking hip hop, and and that's that's what I see, and I think that would be huge for you, and if anybody, I know with your marketing sensibilities and your business sensibilities, I know that you could definitely make that happen.
Thank you, man. That's one of my big things this year is trying to find, because I find social media to be toxic. It's like a toxic environment, and I know we've talked about it before, and I think for me it's I just wanted to find a way to express my personality that was not angry, because that's really how it comes. That's everything comes out on social media almost like angry or like or listen to this, click this, share that. It's like, and I really don't want to bait you into shit. Like I'd really like to, we've been talking for an hour now. It's like it's like that's what I want to do. And thanks. I really would like to diversify into that because, to be honest, I don't really want to be up on stage yelling at people. I want to go play a show when I want to play a show. Yeah. But I don't really want to be up on stage yelling at people to put their hands up, say ho, like whatever, when I'm 45, So I'm really trying to diversify. A couple other things before I get out of here. Sure. Why'd you change the name Thommy Kane? We've talked about it before. Just get into it.
Honestly, this is probably going to be a shocker for anyone who knows me, who hears this. But I was dating a girl named Samantha Rennie, who I was completely in love with, and was probably to this day still my favorite girlfriend I ever had. Ooh. And yeah, we were hanging out. We had a great relationship. Even when we broke up, it was all on good terms. She's a great person. And we were hanging out one night, and I told her, I said, I got to get rid of this name. I have to have a new name, and I want it to be my name, Thommy, but my last name, if I do something with my last name's too, like, it's complicated. It's hard to say. People don't even know how to say it right. I need like a strong, like, one syllable name. And she goes, how about Kane? And I was like, I like that. And I just was like, I'm going to change my Facebook name right now. And I made it Thommy Kane, and that was the beginning of Thommy Kane.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. When you change your Facebook name, that's like the real official declaration. Yeah. But that is what it is. Why did you feel you needed to change the name Poverty?
Poverty was, there was the cultural.
It wasn't the name Poverty around here, especially with people in the hip hop community, had a lot of mystery to it, but it was a solid rep. Like, we all thought you were the best MC, and it didn't have a bad rep. So talk about, why you.
There was a combination of a couple things. As I've discussed with you before, it was definitely Google and search engines and people trying to Google Poverty, and it was impossible to ever find me.
Time out, shout out to every band ever. Every artist, period. Make sure when you go search for your fucking band name or your rap name, it's one of the first few things that comes up. Exactly. It cannot be on page 2. Do not name your band like Feelings. Yeah. Do not name your band
Water.
Yeah. It's fucking, like French fries. It's like you're on the third page, bro. Like, you got to come up quick.
Yeah, man.
At least spell it wrong.
Shit, with Poverty, I think I was on 1,682. Like, after like about a million,
It's like a documentary about Somalia.
Yeah.
And then you.
Exactly. Actually, the number one thing, and then I would say, well, what if I put in rapper Poverty, and the first thing that would come up is Poverty's Paradise from Naughty by Nature, and I was just like, what the fuck? Like, it was, it was a problem.
So the Google thing was part of it.
That was a big part of it.
Part of it was you're trying to shed that identity, be something new?
Sort of, yeah, because it was the cultural mindset in hip-hop had changed. The overall sort of, it used to be that if you were from a struggle and had something real to say, people really wanted to hear that. And I think
Spose changed it all.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Then Spose came out, and suddenly, no.
Now everyone's style changed.
Exactly.
In comes Asher Roth. No, I'm just kidding.
I feel like it definitely got to the point where people were like, man, you can't you can't be called Poverty. Like, if you look at every video, I mean, if you're not driving around in a fucking Bentley, hanging out the roof, throwing $100 bills in the air, people just aren't impressed. We live in that generation. But it was also sort of shedding my skin because after my mom died and I left Hollywood and came back to Maine and was like, fucking the entertainment business.
What year did your mom pass away?
2006. Or no, it was 2007. It was 2007. I'm sorry. It was 2007. I ended up kind of being like, I was like, I tried to ride it out with the music business for a little bit, again, a little bit longer.
Started a rock band?
I did. I started a rock band. I was getting into doing rock music. It was super fun. And then what happened was I got fed up with everyone out there being hooked on drugs, nobody taking shit seriously. Everyone was partying too much. I was partying too much. I remember thinking to myself, like, I can't believe I've been out here this many fucking years. Like, it feels like I've been out here 6 months. It just went by so fast. I would call people in Maine, like I just saw them 6 months ago, and they're like, dude, I haven't fucking seen you in 7 years. Who the fuck even are you anymore? You're calling me? And I'm like, it was weird.
That's one of the things is you literally did, as far as I knew, like, off the map from like 2004 to maybe 2000. 10.
Yeah, exactly. That
And
was
you're just
a big
in LA.
In LA, trying to get something going
Trying
with
to get
this
something
label
going.
and
Yeah, yeah.
right. And eventually, I fucking was like, I'm done. And I even told people, they were like, "What are you gonna do if you go back to Maine?" I said, "I'm gonna go get a fucking minimum wage job. That's what I'm gonna go do." And I don't even give a fuck. That's exactly what I'm gonna do. And I went back to Maine, lived in Yarmouth, in one of Chip's apartment buildings in the basement, and worked at a gas station for like $7.25 an hour at the Big Apple on Route 1. And I worked there for 2.5 years, and it was funny because even though that you might think like, oh, that's a shitty job, 2.5 years of doing that every day, not missing a day, showing up, never being late, I managed to amass enough money where I got my license squared away. I got my first legal vehicle in fucking years. I got myself into a nice apartment with a friend of mine, and it was like my life started to
How old are you at this time? Maybe like 28, 29?
This was from 2009 to 2011.
Okay.
So this was, oh Jesus, I don't know.
30?
Yeah, basically like just over 30. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Because I was born in 78, so it was.
And so you're saying, though this might not seem glamorous, 31. Like in retro, like to the especially compared to like living out in Hollywood, getting $1.5 million, you know, at record advance, this was grounding for you and like almost like some roots. Maybe for the first time.
It was, and also because I think I discovered that my life had always been homeless, shitty crack houses, shelters, druggies and drug dealers and shit like that. And then millionaires and mansions and fucking, it was just, you know, it was like, what the fuck? Like, I just want normal, you know what I mean?
Disparate, places in the map.
Yeah, like, it got to the point where I was like, man, I would do anything just to have a fucking decent car to drive and a decent place to live. Like, that's really all. That's why I started rapping in the first place. I don't know how I've managed to be in the game this long and I still have not managed to achieve the most basic fucking thing that I set out to do. You know what I mean?
Wild.
Yeah. So even still to this day, I'm 39 years old and I don't own a house. Like, and I'm like fucking really appalled at that because that's like one of my number one goals. I just want to own a home and be
It's a nice goal, but also kind of a scam. Home ownership.
People say that. I know. I've heard
Maybe
that.
not. I mean, I know I think owning a home's cool. I don't think a 30-year mortgage is cool.
No. I
don't think owing banks money for 30 years so you can own something you can't buy.
Right.
I just am big on like trying to dispel all the scams of like what we're told we need to do as kids because it's all told to us so we can pay interest.
Exactly.
Anyways, I hope you get that house.
Yeah, thanks.
You know, and I hope you don't have to pay tons of interest, and I hope it's just gifted to you, and it's a wonderful house.
I mean, I'd settle with a nice apartment, and a cool landlord that I don't got to worry about. At this point, it's just that, like, I just get tired of, like, having to, like, make do with, situations all the time and just not being able to, but it's hard, especially when you do music and you're an entrepreneur and you have a lot of things going on and you're in your head all the time. And I'm in my head all the time. I don't know. I'm sure you're probably like that too, right? Yeah.
Well, lately I've been thinking I'm crazy a little bit, but then I realize it's the internet and weed are making me crazy. So this week I'm not smoking weed and I'm trying to not be on Facebook. I've already failed at both.
But I mean, you probably have the same thing with me where you're like, your brain is always focused on the next move, the next thing you're doing.
Yeah,
where
and
you
I can
succeed.
never appreciate where I'm at.
Yeah, in the moment you're in, and then people around you, especially people who love you, you end up having these moments where they feel sort of neglected or unappreciated, and it's like, well, look at it, it's like I love you too, but like, what the fuck are you talking about right now? Like fucking bowling or some shit? Like I don't know. What the fuck?
Yeah. I mean, well, it's hard. It's hard for me. I mean, I really do sometimes have a hard time being just focused because I mean, there's so many. A lot of it is especially rap. So many rappers I see that I'm like, damn, I'm better than that guy. I'm better than that guy. I'm fucking better than this guy. I'm smarter than that guy. I came up with this before that guy. So why am I less? And it's like that will always drive me, but also keep me from just being satisfied as to where I'm at, which as Matt Robinson put on the previous podcast, he's like, dude, you literally have made a living off just doing what you like every day.
Right.
For 10 years, almost now. And I was like, fuck, yeah, I guess you're right. Damn, I guess I never looked at it like
It's
that.
100% true. I mean, like, if you were to go back to when you were a kid and you were to think about what everybody thought you'd wind up being, there's absolutely no way that anybody can ever say that you're a failure at anything.
I mean, yeah, it's all up here. It's all in my head, man. And
exactly.
and I know I think that's one of the. I literally was like talking to myself the other day, like trying to talk myself out of. I was like, bro, you don't need to. And I was like, oh, I'm fucking crazy, man. Like I'm crazy. And but I think recognizing that
I do that too.
is
It's
key.
okay.
Yeah. So we're both crazy. Before I go, is my last question. Who are the top 5 MCs in the state of Maine ever? In your opinion, and you can include yourself. I'm not with the fake modesty, so.
No, well, first of all,
And they don't need to be in order. Just throw out 5.
Yeah. I don't know if the order would be right, but I can tell you with absolute certainty that that I think that some of the nastiest and most incredible rap verses I ever heard from any rapper ever would be Sarah Violet.
Shout out to Sarah Violet,
hands
P-Dank.
down, and that's definite. And then of course I would say it would definitely you and Shane are on that 100%. Like,
shout out to Shane Rise, P-Dank.
Shane Rise, 100%. You, that latest album you put out is, in my opinion, the best hip hop album that's ever been released, ever.
The Good Luck with Your Life
history. Yeah, Good Luck with Your Life.
Thank you, man.
It's the greatest rap album ever released up here, like by anybody.
Ooh, man.
So, and that's including me.
It means a lot. You did write a
post
post about it, and it was one of your signature very long Facebook posts. The only one I've read the entirety of out of selfishness.
I love how you're honest about that shit.
Oh,
it's
you're
so great.
like, there's people, you know how there's those people that like, you meet them in person, and there's their in-person personality, and then there's their Facebook personality. They're like so crazy. Not to say opposites, but like your Facebook personality is like your regular personality on crack. It's like it's like what you just said in one sentence on Facebook is like an essay, and as soon as if you know how you click see more.
Yeah.
Every time I click see more on yours, it's like it takes you to a new page. It's like it opens a Microsoft Word document, an Excel spreadsheet, and it's like, here's what I'm thinking. But you also have a lot of cheerleaders in the comments who support you. So
yeah,
if it works, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
If you ever are gonna read anything that I ever wrote that's really long, recently I posted something called "Who Are You?"
Like a story almost with like dialogue in it.
No. That was this other thing, but it's a couple posts back. But it starts off with "Who are you?" And if there's anything in the world that I ever wrote that I'd like to see get published, it's that. And I think that you would really appreciate it.
I'll check it out. Yeah, I literally see your posts, and I'm like, oh, I'm not gonna read that.
Yeah, I promise you. Though,
I got love for you. I'm just not. I'm just not with the Facebook, long post. But the you do. I mean, you're super. A lot of these insights are super smart, and Facebook really is kind of like the space where you get up and give a speech in 2018. So you've named 3 rappers.
Oh yeah, that's right. So back to the ever around here, and you said I can name me as one, but I kind of don't want to.
Let's throw you in there.
Okay.
You're in that combo. Oh, hang on. There's something going on here. Oh, that's sorry, technical difficulties.
I'm trying to think because this could be. I mean, I know I named the people that are definitely without a guarantee. Oh, it doesn't matter if it doesn't matter at any point in time or if they did this years ago.
Same all the time. Bad Manners. Shout out to Bad motherfucking Manners.
So I would say it'd be Sarah Violet, you, Shane Rise, me, and Bad Manners are probably the 5 best rappers that ever existed.
We should do a song together. Even though Bad Manners is a Facebook Republican now.
He is.
Or he's like a conspiracy theorist / Republican. But when I saw him in person, it was all love.
Yeah, it is. Oh, he has nothing but love for you.
Yeah,
but
we got love.
You're the social media enemy, not the real life enemy.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's those people I see on social media. Even this kid I went to high school with who, like, I love him when I see him in person, but on Facebook, I'm always like, come on, like, get the fuck out of here.
You know who William Randolph Hearst is?
Yeah.
You know who Joseph Pulitzer is, right?
No. The Pulitzer Prize?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Joseph Pulitzer, back in the early days of the media, this is like the late 1800s, early 1900s. Joseph Pulitzer was the guy that was, he owned like most of the newspapers in the country, and William Randolph Hearst owned most of the other ones that Joseph Pulitzer didn't. And they had a war going on between each other all the way up until like the Franklin D. Roosevelt presidency, where Pulitzer was pushing for a very liberal agenda, like I guess, or a democratic agenda. We wouldn't even use the term liberal because it's bastardized now, but democratic agenda. And William Randolph Hearst was pushing for a very conservative agenda.
Yeah.
And their effects on news and news media kind of over time that divisiveness that's always existed. It's kind of like nowadays everyone is one or the other.
Yeah.
You're either Joseph Pulitzer or you're William Randolph Hearst.
I'm big on, this is my thing going forward, and we'll see if I can stick to this, because when it comes down to election day, I might need to change this, for the moment. But like, really, I'm really trying to advocate for fuck the Democrats, fuck the Republicans. They're both big corporations, and we shouldn't vote for either of them.
I agree with 100%.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. Shout out to Thommy Kane. Shout out to Beards, his group with Dave Gutter and Shane Rise. Go check it out. They got some videos up there. I got to go do a phone call with the Minnesota Timberwolves radio station real quick. Maybe Thommy can hang. And maybe I can trick him into a freestyle or something. But I'm going to play a poverty song at the end of this because I'd like to give some love to, the legacy. So shout out to Pop. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Absolutely, man.
At Thommy Kane.
Yeah, at Thommy
with a
Kane.
H.
ThommyKane everywhere. You can find me everywhere with that name.
All right, man. Thanks for coming on. Peace out.
Special delivery from the hot box, bitch. POV. I'm the postman, cause every time your bills come in, everybody's looking crazy like I'm hurting the game. I'm the postman, cause every time I serve the block, watch me hit another corner while I swerve and stop. I'm the postman, cause every time your bills come in, everybody's looking crazy like I'm hurting the game. I'm the postman, cause every time I serve the block, watch me hit another corner while I swerve and stop. I sit with 2 pencils equipped with utensils to flip a few mentals and script these new sentences. Shit, room temperature's hot, nude women will not confuse me. Depends, the only friend that I've got. CJ's when they're hot, keep sending them drops, keep them in the pocket, speak venom to shock. Then when I'm on top, clue everyone in on what then would have been if me and all of them swap. My soul's colder from holding this old grudge. Both of my bold shoulders like stones, they won't budge. Nobody knows no one, so no one can go judge. Lo and behold, our feet soldiers their own slugs. None of y'all handle it quite like I handle it right, cause I'm damaging mics. My plan is to fight till my fans are just like, God damn it, he's tight, and God damn it, he's white, and y'all panic postman, cause every time your bills come in, everybody's looking crazy like I'm hurting the game. I'm the postman, cause every time I serve the block, watch me hit another corner while I swerve and stop. I'm the postman, cause every time your bills come in, everybody's looking crazy like I'm hurting the game. I'm the postman, cause every time I serve the block, watch me hit another corner while I swerve and stop. I'm making something out of nothing, and ain't nothing harder when you ain't even got nothing to make something out of. Look what dudes gotta do to just prove that they cook these crews hotter. Who would've knew what it took to prove I'm a lyrical cat? So I shook these fools proper with lyrical raps. Yeah, I shook these fools proper. Murdered their camps and I whoop-de-doo-dada. I'm the verbalist champ. I get the best of results. Lyrical weapons of both. The world's greatest, but I'm only having sex with adults. I tried to consult anyone who's next to insult. 1,000 watts of electrical volts sent to your pulse. I'm the Incredible Hulk. A madman on a mission, dropping more bombs of terror than Afghanistan henchmen. See, you recognize the proof. I'm nicer and much liver. I'm a sniper on the roof that fires at bus drivers. The postman, cause every time your bills come in, everybody's looking crazy like I'm hurting the game. I'm the postman, cause every time I serve the block, watch me hit another corner while I swerve and stop. I'm the postman, cause every time your bills come in, everybody's looking crazy like I'm hurting the game. I'm the postman, cause every time I serve the block, watch me hit another corner while I swerve and stop. So I'm constantly attack, slaughter every track, slaughter me to rap, watch him beat the crap out of every act. Animosity has got me, now it's locked me in a trap. I'll never tolerate you saying poverty is whack. I'll probably react, possibly come at any fucking MC that ever tries to bother me with flack. If you target me or even try to talk to me, I'll snap. If poverty says it, you know it's gotta be a fact. Until I'm multi-platinum, then I'm not to be relaxed. Which could have been simple, but the economy collapsed. Now I'm gonna be another piece of property with tax. Commodity, which seems to be a lot for me to grasp. It's almost like reality gets shot me in the ass. But I'm cocky because everyone had mocked me in the past. Now I'm gonna laugh at those who thought of me as trash. And I won't stop till I'm at the top of every class. I'm the postman, cause every time your bills come in, everybody's looking crazy like I'm hurting the game. I'm the postman, cause every time I serve the block, watch me hit another corner while I swerve and stop. I'm the postman, cause every time your bills come in, everybody's looking crazy like I'm hurting the game. I'm the postman, cause every time I serve the block, watch me hit another corner while I swerve and stop. I went through struggle. What you know about that? Huh? You know how I made it here? You know how? Cause I'm a hustler, baby.